everyone, and welcome to our evening public hearing at of the Electoral Boundaries Commission here in Wainwright. Just to give you some background, first of all, we are an independent commission established by the legislature of Alberta to follow the legislation which requires every second election approximately, or every 8 to 10 years, to take a look at the boundaries of Alberta's constituencies and to determine whether they should be varied or changed. Our task for this commission is one of the first things we have to deal with is the fact that the legislature has decided to expand the seat numbers from 87 to 89. Currently, we have the map before you. Well, not really, but the map of Alberta is divided into 87 constituencies currently. So for the next provincial election, there will be 89. So we have to decide where those two new constituencies go and where the boundaries are going to be drawn for the other. I can describe it. No. So before you is the commission, to my far right is Mr. John, no, that's my far left, sorry. Mr. John Evans is at the end of the table here. He is a lawyer from Southern Alberta. He works with a province-wide firm known as Stringham and does trials throughout the province, but mainly focusing on in Lethbridge. He's been recognized in terms of his legal ability by way of receiving the King's Counsel designation, and he also volunteers by serving on the Alberta Justice Nominating Committee. And to my immediate left is Susan Sampson. She hails from Sylvan Lake, Alberta, and for those of us who are in the south, Sylvan Lake is central Alberta, and she is has been recognized for her volunteer activity, especially in the area of healthcare, and she has served several terms as municipal councillor and as mayor of Sylvan Lake. I'm Justice Dallas Miller. I'm a judge from the Court of King's Bench in Southern Alberta, and I'm honored to serve as chairman of the commission. My immediate right is Dr. Julian Martin, who's a historian, a retired university professor from the University of Alberta, and lives in Sherwood Park and volunteers with respect to several projects and committees at that community, and also serves on the Surface Rights Board and the Land Compensation Board. At the far end of the table is Mr. Greg Clark. Greg comes from Calgary, and he has been a member of the legislature of Alberta and served one term representing Calgary Elbow. Greg is in the information and knowledge industry and consults widely with corporations and gives advice on corporate governance. We are your Electoral Boundaries Commission, and to give you some sense of what we're going to do, it's helpful to look at a timeline. This commission was established by the Speaker of the Legislature in late March of this year. And from the time of appointment, the clock starts ticking, and we have to have a report at certain stages. So we were appointed in late March. We met a couple of times in April as a commission to discuss the population, to discuss various approaches to how we're going to take on this task, and lay out the public hearing schedule. We started the public hearings last week. We spent all of this week in Edmonton and Westlock, St. Paul, and now tonight, Wainwright. We will conduct public hearings until the last week in June. And after we've completed our public hearings, we will work on a report, and the report will be completed by late October, and that interim report will be submitted to the Speaker of the Legislature, and it will become public. And the public will have a chance for response, comments, and feedback to that report. We will then provide an opportunity for further public hearings starting in possibly November and December and up to February. And then, based on those public hearings on the interim report, the comments we receive from them, we will finalize the report and submit it to the Speaker of the Legislature in late March. And typically, the Speaker receives that report, and the Legislature is then obligated to enact legislation with respect to electoral divisions based on that report. They're not bound by the terms of our recommendations, but they take our recommendations and fashion statutory provisions from that point on. And as you know, each constituency has one member of the Legislature of Alberta. As I said, we're moving from 87 to 89. And voters in that constituency elect that member of the legislature. To provide some context and background, I think it's helpful to look at the previous commission. The previous commission issued its final report in 2017. I indicated that we're moving from 87 to 89 seats. Well, the main reason we're doing that is because of the high population in the province of Alberta. In 2017, it may be a little hard to see on that graph, but the population that the commission based its recommendations upon was slightly over 4 million people. Now, for our report purposes, we are well over 4 million, in fact, 4.88 million. The significance of that population change can be seen in this in these two charts. So the last commission in 2017 took a population of 4,062,609 Albertans divided by 87. That gave us the mean amount of 46,697 per constituency. In Alberta, we are based on the principle of effective representation, and effective representation is meant if your target population is anywhere below that mean by 25% or above by 25%. So the target range is a population of 35,000 approximately and just over 58,000. That was the 2017 report. By contrast, now the population of Alberta has increased well over 700,000 to 4,888,723. That's the amount, the population that this commission is relying on for the purposes of providing our report for electoral boundaries. So that changes the mean average up to 54,929, or roughly 5,000, and that target range then varies from 41,000 to almost 59,000. That's the formula that we'll be relying upon for our report. How do we come up with the boundary? Well, we've got certain suggestions and guidelines in the legislation. Unfortunately, the population growth has not been evenly scattered across the province and focused mainly on the two larger cities, but nevertheless, we have certain legislative guides to help us come up with our report. Our goal is to provide a report that Alberta constituencies all benefit from what we call effective representation. Not necessarily one person, one vote, but effective representation. And in completing our task, we have to look at these various factors: the sparsity and the relative density of the population throughout the province, factors such as common community interests and organizations within each electoral division. Geographic features are important for helping us determine boundaries for constituencies, particularly in the outlying and areas outside of urban situations. As well, we look at communication and transportation lines across the province. And our task is to produce very clear and understandable boundaries so that the public knows what electoral division they are in and where the borders are. In addition, the legislation allows us to take into consideration other factors that may assist us in coming to our conclusions in our report. That's where public hearings come in. We're in the midst of the public hearings. We want to hear from you as Albertans as it relates to your thoughts in terms of your own local boundaries, but you're not restricted to your own electoral division in these presentations. What you have before you is the current map of Alberta laying out the 87 constituencies. At the end of this process, by March of 2026, we will have another map of Alberta giving the boundaries for 89 constituencies. So, sorry, I don't have the local map there. Karen, you got the local map. So, in light of that presentation, we have blocked off this evening, and we have probably advised you that you're time limited for your presentation, but we've got lots of time this evening, so I'm going to call on Colleen Penning to give a presentation. I'm sorry. I didn't know that. I thought you told me. Okay, is Bruce Hugh here? Oh, okay. Sorry, are you Miss Linda Justaco? Okay. Pardon?
Linda's a tough name to pronounce.
Did you want to make a presentation today? Oh, well, please come forward. Please come forward. There's a little bit of a mix-up on our communication. Oh, okay. Okay. So you're gonna fly the flag by yourself? Okay. Good. And it makes us happy when you bring your own map. We know you're serious. So take some time to introduce yourself and tell us, what you want us to know, and then we're a very inquisitive group. We like to ask questions, so we'll have a dialogue. And you can stand or sit, whatever's comfortable.
Sure. I am from Vermilion, within the constituency, and I am currently a president of a constituency association.
Okay.
And we've only been in existence for about 3 or 4 years as a CA. So we've had a lot of building to do, and we have about 12 core members, and about 8 of them are experienced involved. So that's kind of what we do. So yeah, we had a couple meetings on the boundary to try to see if there was something that we could add to this discussion. And the first thing is we looked at population, but we did it in terms of people that could vote, not actual population. And the figures I found were from March of 2024. So that's kind of what I based what we were going to talk about.
Well, tell me, what's the source of those?
I think it's a really nice long list.
Okay.
I know I had to go back and find them again, and I had a little difficulty finding them. But it looks to be like a fairly responsible type source, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was very tiny, so I had to write it all in English.
Sure.
So from this, we kind of looked at the numbers, and of voters, they say it's about 2,966,192, And if you divide that by 87, you get 34,094.
That's the Elections Alberta data set.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for voters, right.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. Great. So we come in at, kind of in the middle, but we would have room for a couple thousand, those numbers.
So what is your number for this?
Our number is, second from the bottom, 32,357 is the, based on that chart. And at the moment, I think we have room for about a couple thousand based just on that alone, which could be different by now too.
Well, let me just show you tell you the figures that we'll be relying on.
Okay.
So the last commission had a population base of 46,042 for this electoral district. Okay. This year, we're relying on the 2021 census, which I didn't explain properly earlier, which is updated continuously by both the federal government and the province, and it's the figures from July of 2024 that we're relying on overall for the province. So, a long explanation to get to the figures that we're relying on. And your riding has a population of 48,061. So, the variance is, the comparable variance is close to the voters, about 2,000 apart each.
Okay, yeah, right. So it got us to thinking about various things. One is that not far from Vermilion is the little town of Manville. And the training area for Vermilion, this one, Manville's only about 12 miles away. And so they are one with Fort Saskatchewan, which is a long way away from them. And it is quite close.
Yeah, we drove through that today.
That was one thing that we all did. The other thing is Colleen actually was going to speak on this. She has, her first husband was First Nation, and she has a daughter that is. And her daughter has had quite a lot to do with the First Nation people. And the interesting thing is that we have in our constituency this area, which is Onion Lake.
Yeah. And
the reality is, the reality is that apparently Frog Lake and Onion Lake people go back and forth an awful lot. Some of them actually have some place to live in both places. So in many respects, it would make sense for them to be part of our constituency for that reason alone. And I think the numbers come out quite well if we're looking for a couple of thousand. I know that it interrupts the northern part, which then gets more complicated.
But you have Onion Lake and Frog Lake next door.
Yeah, we do not have Frog Lake.
No. And you're prepared?
We would.
Yeah.
We think probably they should have a little more attention, and we could do that using both communities and kind of try to, actually Colleen is our plum to help us to make some contacts and get them probably more involved in politics than they normally do sometimes. I'm not saying they all don't, but we also have a Hutterite colony that I've heard in the past the reason they voted was that they were given a lot of booze and then put on a bus and brought to the voting area, which doesn't sound right to me. I think it's better to help people to understand that voting
Where's the colony in the map?
The colony is near Marwayne. There are plenty in the area, but I think that's the only one that's in our neck of the woods. And what else did I want to say? Also, when I submitted a written report, I mentioned that three people didn't seem to be a big deal, but apparently in Lloydminster, they are. It is a huge problem. And so we need to spend more oversight on that. Also, the fact that Lloydminster is a border city, there are a lot of issues, and healthcare is another one. If Albertans go to Lloyd to see a specialist, it's worse if it's on the Saskatchewan side, but even if it's on the Alberta side, all the medical is looked after by Saskatchewan. So even records coming back and forth, because if you go to a doctor in Alberta, everything's in your online records.
Right.
These are not. So you can go to your place that did your MRI, for instance, and say, I want the results, and you can get them to take them back to your doctor. But it needs to be a lot of work done there too. Little by little, we start discovering some of these things, because I don't live in Lloyd, but Colleen was, and she's actually just moving to Vermilion. So the core. I don't know, did you get a copy of the report I sent?
Yes,
yeah?
we would have received it.
Okay.
And I
It's okay. It's just
I can't say I specifically recall your name attached to it, but
yeah.
we have the record.
Okay. It's just also we've learned since then too, so it'll change.
Okay.
The other thing that had come up is one of our members was involved in the Anglican Church, and they used the pie-shaped kind of groupings, and they said it was a disaster. The communication properly, and you've got people up here and down here, and I can understand that for a city that might be an idea, but it does pose its own problems. And I was hoping to get Elizabeth to come, but she couldn't make it today to explain their experience of that. But I think she submitted a letter as well.
Okay.
So it should
When you
be.
say pie shape, what do you reference?
Well, like if you took Edmonton, because that's where a lot of the population is.
Yeah.
And you came outward.
For creating boundaries, you mean?
Yeah, for creating a constituency.
Okay.
Yeah. That, might look good on paper, but it brings with it a whole lot of.
No.
Plus, you have a whole different kind of people living in each one. I mean, city versus semi-city versus farming and ranching, and you run into all kinds of things that way. Any questions?
Wow. Yeah, we'll have. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And I love the map, and I'm sad it was taken away, but
you can have it back.
I wanted first to thank you, because your presentation hits on many themes that we've been discovering in other hearings and a lot. So thank you. And all your friends and colleagues who weren't here tonight and helped to discuss all this are to be thanked. I wanted first just to clarify about the town to the east of Vermilion that is part of your market economy circuit. What's the name of that?
Manville.
Manville. It's west. It's west, excuse me. Yeah.
Just like your right side.
Good.
I wanted to touch not upon on Lloyd in particular, but the whole general issue of sharing a border with our our friends in Saskatchewan. Do you find that there are other issues that are to be that we as a commission should be alive to? So, for example, your reservation went tightly on the border up there in the northern part of your electoral riding. Is there an equivalent one on the other side? Do these sort of things happen, or is it just a special feature of Lloyd?
No, there are other reservations not that far away.
And so do they, so the transit across the Sask-Alberta border is quite common and all along this stretch for any number of reasons.
It is, yes, very much so. For the whole province, I believe.
Well, I'm sure that's true.
Because on one side you might have Provost, on the other side you've got some other town or community that keeps you going.
Are you near Alsace?
No.
Okay, one of my favorite names.
Yeah, it is a nice name, isn't it?
And I wondered if I might just to pursue the economic thing that your mention of Manville brings up. Do you feel that there is a lot of economic traffic south of Wainwright, past the military base, into Provost? People go to Provost, or people come from Provost to Wainwright, in your estimation?
Provost might. I'm not positive about people coming up to Wainwright, but
Okay.
it is quite possible, yes. But there are a lot of little towns in between, so
Well, yeah.
yeah.
And your presentation, like others we have heard of the last couple of days, really point out that fact. You know, there are lots of villages that are active and vibrant and alive. I have no further questions at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll just build on what Julian was saying, and just first off, I thank you very much for coming and giving some thought to this. This is really, it's a very important exercise, and for us, it's been a real pleasure to travel around the province and just see different parts of the province and just how it changes, you know, and then it's really important to hear from people who live in the community. So thank you for coming and making that effort. I'm curious, sort of practically speaking, you talked about Manville and the sort of trading area. How far west does that go, would you say? Sort of up Highway 16, or, I mean, places as far away as like Viking, that seems a little far away.
I think by the time you get to Innisfree, then they start going to Vegreville.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's sort of what I thought, just kind of looking at it. But I was kind of curious what your perspective was. That's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, thank you for coming out, and, you know, you got under pressure here with losing your colleague, and I think you've done quite well. But I wanted to ask you, we were earlier in the day in St. Paul, and they spent quite a bit of time talking about the industry in the area and potential growth. And I have to say, I'm not that familiar with your riding of Vermilion, Lloydminster, Wainwright. Can you talk at all about the industry or any forecasts or big things coming on board that we should be aware of that might see an increase in your population, that people would move into the area? Yeah.
That's always a good question. Well, Lloydminster is an oil center, definitely. They have some very big refinery type things. I don't even know all the things they do with oil there. So when oil goes up and down, Lloydminster also does go up and down for sure. We have to the south of partway, actually just out of Vermilion to Manville, running along the Battle River, is a brand new wind farm. It's now been there about 2 years. So that was, for many of us, that was fantastic. There are people who didn't think so, but I think so. I come from farther north of Vermilion originally in the farmland there. And it hurts me every time I drive down Highway 41 to see the number of black tanks that are in practically every single field all the way to Delta Point. And so I don't understand why, this is probably not your issue, but I don't understand why wind farms are considered so ugly compared to all these black tanks and all the problems with trying to clean up after the tanks. I mean, one of our members on our executive has had their oil well cleaned and fixed a number of years ago, and it's starting to seep through the ground again. So I don't know if we ever will end that problem. I don't know. Just the fact that it can happen, and maybe not, hopefully not too often, but that is an issue. We have a lot of farmers. The farmers have become bigger. Some of them have turned into corporations, bigger machinery, bigger amounts of yield, and that is, for the most part, going well. Some ranching. And the oil industry, of course, mattered around the whole region. And then there is, of course, is the Army base here at Wainwright. We have a few of them that take some interest in local politics, but I also think that what happens is they're moved around so much that
they're not there very long.
Yeah. What else? That's some of the highlights anyway.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, we're all concerned about representation, okay? We don't, I don't see on the list your MLA here. Have you talked to him or her about any challenges they might have about the size of the riding or something like that?
Unfortunately, our MLA doesn't seem to. I mean, he'll hear you, but he doesn't really help. So.
What about access to your MLA? Can you get a hold of his office?
We can, yes. Actually, his office is in Vermilion now. It used to be in Wainwright, but it is. Yeah. Lots of letter writing, lots of that kind of thing, but yeah, I don't know. I know what
I take it you're not in his.
I have been in it, but yeah, I've been to the one on wanting to get rid of Canadian pension plans too. So, the one point that Colleen was going to make, that she actually was in Saskatchewan for a while, and she said that there is that one minister that has the top third of Saskatchewan. And uses it plain. You might have heard me saying that before we started. And they seem to think that that's a better way of doing it than trying to stretch out constituencies the way we have to.
Now, is that a plane provided by the
I'm not sure.
government?
I would hope so, but I don't know. But it would seem to be reasonable. I mean, if we're going to have to look after bigger areas for the population, we have to find some other ways to deal with it. Because still we would really like to have population-based voting, and not have 50,000 over here and 20,000 over here. I know it happens, but if there's a way of navigating that would be good. Do you want my map?
No, actually, I want to go back to the formula. I just want to make sure that, okay, so now, according to our figures, the population of this electoral division was 48,001. So you're in the low end of the sweet spot, right? Population-wise, you're doing fine here.
We're not complaining, but
Yeah.
at the same time, if we do have to make accommodations, we thought, well,
Yeah.
then it should be something.
Yeah. Now, you did say, okay, now can we go back up to the map? Yeah. And if you wouldn't mind maybe just showing us, initially you mentioned a couple of things. A town that is in your electoral division, but is disconnected with the community that should be in another one. Did I understand you correctly?
Yeah,
And, yeah, Mandeville is.
Manville out of it,
Oh, so you would be happy if Manville went
yes.
the other way? Okay. Good.
For their sake, actually, we have four people that showed up at one of our meetings and didn't realize they were because they're across the road.
Right.
Yeah, it's not very far off the boundary.
No.
Yeah. That's right. I had signals the whole time. Okay. Any other questions or any questions that you may have of us?
No, I just, that's a fantastic job.
Okay.
I've given you questions.
And I've noted that we have your written submission as well, and we will be sure to look at that.
I just, as a passing final remark, no, I think Justice Miller made as remark on the fact that we, under the Act, are charged with looking at population, which obviously is a larger pool of humans than the voting pool. I looked at that chart myself a few weeks back, with rough and ready calculation that the average across the province is to multiply your voter population by 1.67, because that tends to be the mean number across the province. But we've also found that nearly every district is so different that really isn't a helpful finding guide for us. Right? Because in some districts, some parts of Edmonton, if you multiply the voting population by 1.67, it's right on. So every 100 voters is carrying a responsibility for voting for 167 persons. But it's not true in other areas. So there's a very limited kind of argument that you can push by examining the voter vote. Right? But it is valuable because the district writing hasn't changed very much.
No.
And of course, it's changed wild because of the growth of their population. So I found at least that it wasn't a tool that I could apply very readily in other places. We're also asked in the Act to only accept figures, census figures, or any other useful information that we can distribute across each of the ridings. And so I know the line of argument that goes along with looking at the voters, and I pressed it myself until I discovered that it's false. So I think we'll have to leave the voter argument by the by.
Again, thank you very much for obviously the time you put into it.
I appreciate it.
Anybody else want to make some comments? And don't want to put anybody in the spot, but I can. Yes, sir. Yeah. Sure. Can you come forward so the mic catches you? one thing I failed to mention is that we are recording it.
That's how we record. It's
Yeah.
through the mic.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like your hat. I like your hat.
Oh, Canada.
Okay, so you're saying that, taking the numbers by the voters will go by, but how is the emphasis on the population more valid than that?
I'll take a quick crack at that. There's a few things. MLAs represent new things like schools, hospitals, post-secondary, social service. And of course, people under 18 don't vote, but they're a big part of what MLAs work on, schools. And then people move to Alberta from other places. And
You're saying MLA?
so, yeah, so the member of the Legislative Assembly, your representative,
Okay.
would be responsible to make sure schools are in place, for example. And so if there's a significant population of kids in a particular constituency, that's not picked up in population, it's not picked up in voter roll. And the voter roll tends to be lag behind pretty far in terms of population. Pretty good at population, we calculate that on a pretty regular basis. But until there's an election or a big enumeration, the voter numbers are pretty unreliable. And then, of course, as you know, lots of people move to Alberta, so that's a good thing. But those people, they get their health care card, they get a job, they pay a bit of tax, but they don't tend to register to vote right now. That again sort of lags behind. So there's a few reasons why those voter roll numbers are a little less reliable.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It would add to that, you have shadow populations in the oil patch. You know, they're here, but they're not registered to vote here, but they're here. And so that skews numbers as well. And certainly true in the big cities, we have a lot of new Canadians. And so they're not eligible to vote, but they're here. And so the burden on the MLA is they're all the same. So it seems a little awkward when you first confront these facts, but I'm starting to get comfortable with it. So that is to say, the MLA has the responsibility for all of those people, as well as the voters. Well, in fact, the voters have a responsibility for all the other people as well. I never had thought about voting from that point of view before, but it is the case that there are more people who, every single voter has to carry the burden of representing a bunch more people who can't vote. I'm not sure we're making their life easier, but that's the way we are dealing with it. And then the sheer brutal formal fact of the law is that we're directed to pay our attention to the total population number.
Okay. I should have worn my T-shirt that I invented with a slogan on it that I just don't get it.
We could all have one of them.
So I take your name down.
Oh, we didn't get your name in. No,
Sorry.
for answer, they would just want to know.
For which?
Yeah, we just need you to identify yourself.
Yeah, Michael. Okay, Michael or Mick. Just take those. Well, Lyndon. That would be my title, Lyndon. You know, still, there's sometimes in a discussion or decision, you know, two sides are presented, and neither one seems to really fit the bill for what's accomplished. It seems to me there's a third place somewhere here that's slipping away.
You mean in terms of numbers?
In terms of, like, I thought constituencies were set up according to the number of people that could vote who vote in their MLA, whoever that
Yeah.
be. So whether you've got 10,000 people in there, that's the population, but of the 10,000, only 50 are covered to vote. How does the population turn more with vote? I'm missing it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit slow.
No, you actually raised a conundrum, but go ahead.
Oh, just, add a thought, is that the population is a snapshot in time of everybody who is in that area. And that area is made up of, as I indicated, voters and non-voters. But the boundaries that we put together today will stay in place for 8 years, 2 election cycles. And the change happens, those groups, the new Canadians will become Canadians and vote. The 17-year-olds will turn 18 and vote. Other people will die. So then that...
Before I lose my train of thought, because
Go ahead.
where I'm at, it flips away quickly. So then what we're maybe looking at, we're looking at the potential of the number of voters that could come from the vote.
There will also, that's another group that I didn't touch on. There will be a change in the people moving in and moving out. So they felt that the best representation of how large or small your area is to not look at voters, but to look at population, because that is easier to track over the next 8 years.
Okay, but for me, unless I'm mistaken in my interpretation, that the keyword there is potential voters in that population.
That's what we...
Over the 8 years.
Yeah.
I mean, what now is maybe not what we're 4 years, right?
You know, and you're exactly right, because the number we use today is already out of date. That population number is changing as we speak, and so is that voter number. So it's either one or the other, but it's always been population because of the span between this kind of work that we do. And it's also, you know, more nonpartisan. You know, it's everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you know, it's not any specific voter, it's everybody in the riding. I don't know.
Several generations ago, where the decision was made to do population, and that's not unique to Alberta, it's every province and federal as well. There was a time, back in the recent 60s, they did enumerate or calculate the numbers based on voters. Okay, but that has changed, and you know, there's nothing we can do about it.
No, we're at.
And so the act is very, very specific as to how we do that calculation.
Makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'll take that shirt too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's okay. No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure. Okay, well, we can adjourn, have our early break now, and if anybody else comes by 8 o'clock, we can, you know, we've advertised for this time slot, and sometimes people come late, and so we'll wait here till about 8 o'clock before we shut down.
you.